Keegan Ranney as a YouTube channel has become a channel focused around responses to apologetics and religious rhetoric as a whole. Some may call me a counter-apologist. Having open dialogue about faith and religion is important to me as an atheist. As many of us know, religious extremists have a tendency to hate atheists, whether that be through dogma or ignorance. So to me, sharing my perspective is a way to open the minds of the people who don't see eye to eye with fellow skeptics, and to educate people on the subject of atheism as a whole. And beyond that, opening this type of discussion can benefit our society as a whole because so many have misguided hate or vitriol towards religious skepticism. One of the arguments I come across quite often is that skepticism of a higher power is a dangerous idea that should be stopped. This type of rhetoric has obvious dangerous consequences, so I engage in the discourse. It was 2 years ago when I made my response to a YouTube channel called The American Individual, and back then I had a completely different mindset. While my principles and morals are still very similar, my focus and efforts have shifted, and in that time it seems so has the American Individuals to an extent. This video I'll be looking at today is the latest upload on Dylan's channel, but it is over a year old at this point. Regardless, it's on a topic that is more in line with my current focus. The video in question is titled, "America is Falling Apart, Here's the Solution." So I thought it would be interesting to take another look at Dylan's channel, so we can unpack some potentially misleading rhetoric or clear up some confusion about America and its affiliation with Christianity.
Hello and welcome to The American Individual. I'm your host Dylan, and today we have a new video for you guys, and we actually have a new series. It's going to be called Faith Friday.
Unfortunately, this series didn't last long, as this is the most recent upload in over a year. Maybe it'll continue, but who knows. It would have been fun to hear more of his thoughts on faith, especially considering the direction this video is going. Spoiler alert, there wasn't much to really dive into. It was all pretty vague.
And we were going to focus on faith-based topics, specifically Christian topics, because that is my faith. And in this series, we'll talk about Christianity itself and how it factors into American life and maybe even, personal stories. But I will probably bring some guests onto the show for this series just because I am not a theologian.
Neither am I, but I think it would be interesting if you brought me into one of the episodes if this series should continue. Having a live discussion between you, a Christian, and myself, an atheist, seems like it could be interesting content and maybe an effective way to go about our differences.
So I don't feel qualified to talk on some topics, but there are some topics that I can talk about and research myself.
And I also feel comfortable responding to a lot of topics in regards to theology, especially when it's about the overlap of science and religion, or freedom of expression in the United States. In my opinion, you don't necessarily have to be an expert to talk about a specific field as long as you try to be as informed as is necessary. Try to accurately convey data and specialists, and do not value your own stance above those who are experts in the field. If all of those boxes are checked, then you should be good to go and talk about whatever.
In this video, we will talk about modern kind of issues and problems that we see the American people facing and Christianity. But before we get into the video, make sure to like and subscribe, as well as check out the merch store if you want to see the channel grow and improve.
Wait, if Dylan is going to do that plug, then so am I. If you guys like this type of response content and would like to see more videos covering religious topics and discussions from the perspective of a progressive atheist, then I highly recommend subscribing to this channel, Keegan Ranney, because that is exactly what I like to do.
Anyways, let's get into the video. Now, a lot of this will probably be me soapboxing, but unless you've been living under a rock, you've definitely noticed like a general downward trend in our society's morals and values.
I guess it really depends on what your morals and values are, but to me, I actually see the opposite. In general, we have grown more accepting of different types of people, especially in regards to the LGBT community and even atheists such as myself. And while there are definitely movements and groups in opposition to the acceptance of these people, in general, society has grown more tolerant. To me, that is an incline in morality, and I truly believe that is the right way to think about it. That's not to say we don't face any downward trends, but I do believe that, overall, we're on a moral incline.
Now, sexually immoral things such as drag queens story time for kids and shows for kids.
What does this have to do with morality? In what ways are drag queens in front of kids a morally bad thing? Often the complaint is phrased in one of two ways. One,
but Keegan, it's confusing the children.
Which is just like, how? Sure, they might ask questions like,
I mean, why is a boy dressed up like a girl?
But that's just how kids are. They're naturally curious and are going to ask questions. These questions aren't even that hard to answer. Just say, that's how they want to dress, and move on. Plus, if you're really so worried about confusing children, I don't think you are. Most of the people who say that are the types of people to teach their children their faith, which is much more confusing because religion is a very difficult thing to understand. Most adults don't even really understand it very well. So if y'all really cared about not confusing children, which I think is stupid to begin with, I think we should inspire curiosity, then maybe save the religious indoctrination until they're old enough to understand such topics and think for themselves. 2.
But Keegan, it's sexualizing the children.
Nope. Nuh-uh. Shut up. Drag queens are not sexualizing kids.
There are literally people giving lap dances to kids during Drag Queen Story Hour.
It doesn't exist. That never happened. You're making stuff up.
But I saw a video online of a drag queen wearing very provocative clothing.
Yeah, and that was at an 18+ event. Those exist. Not everything drag related is shown in front of kids, and even when it is, it's almost certainly age appropriate. Can people please stop saying this? Either way you put it, there's not really any reasonable issue with drag queens in front of kids. Overall, it's just a stupid complaint propagated by the right to spread bigotry. And it works! A lot of people, even leftists, believe that there's some bad shit going on at drag events when it's all really just a lie.
Excessive partying and hoe phases in young teenagers and adults.
It kind of seems like you just want to stop people from living lives differently to the way that you think is ideal. Not everybody has to live like you. Are there some issues that come from excessive partying and such? Sure. But fuck, man. Let loose sometimes. Live life. Have fun. Let people live their life to their fullest and enjoy themselves.
Excessive drug use, pride, depression, suicides, mental illness, violence, and so much more are all problems that seem more relevant in our great nation and are problems that are just popping up.
Okay, so I get that you consider pride a sin, but lumping that in with stuff like drug abuse and suicide is really messed up no matter how you spin it. Pride is a normal human emotion that comes in many different forms, many of which are healthy. For instance, I am proud to be a biology major, and you are proud to be an American. As long as we're mature about our pride, then we shouldn't really have a problem. We all feel pride in some sort of way, so why are you making it out to be some sort of inherently evil thing? Unless you're talking about LGBT pride, in which case, yikes, dude. Homophobia is not a good look.
All these gay people being so loud and proud just for being gay. It's sickening. Just stop shoving it in our faces.
We could have a whole discussion about how LGBT folk have a good reason to be prideful about their sexuality or identity, but that's a whole big discussion for another time. But rest assured that hating on that pride is a part of the problem. If you really want them to stop shoving it in your face, then maybe practice what you preach and stop calling them sinners for simply existing.
Now, if that's because of the internet or just a general lack of values, I think statistics can kind of show that it is because of the general lack in values.
Dylan, we went over this in the last video. If you really believe that, then you need to present us with those statistics. If what you're saying really is true, then it shouldn't be that difficult. Just show us one study that supports that idea. You don't even clarify what you mean. You just say, it's a lack in values, and move on. What values? What data supports that people are losing these values? Why is that a bad thing? Where is your evidence? You're missing all the important stuff. I'm so confused. What do I even respond to? This is just a bunch of nothing.
Now, I believe the reason we are facing all these issues is because we as a people have turned from God, the Christian God, and have fallen to our sinful nature as all humans are bound to do.
If we're all bound to do it, then why does it matter the religious affiliation of the person? It really doesn't make any sense why this has to be a religious thing. Just because you follow your faith doesn't mean that people who don't are evil, vile people, or that they are a plague on society, or even that they do bad things. I have morals just like everyone else. The difference between you and me, Dylan, is that I don't need a book to tell me what those morals are or why they're important. To me, it just seems like you're trying to villainize the outgroup.
Now, church attendance has steeply fallen over the past century as a consequence and sort of cause of all these issues.
I do not believe that the issues our society is facing is correlated to the decline in church attendance. You showed a graph displaying the decline in church membership, and I believe that there has been less people affiliating themselves with the church much more in recent years. But you didn't do the important part of showing the correlation between that and the incline in social issues. Just because less people attend church and you say we're falling apart does not mean that they are related whatsoever. Furthermore, correlation does not equal causation. Even if you were to prove that the decrease in church attendance is at all related to increase in, say, alcohol abuse, that would not prove it was the cause. Have you ever heard of confounding variables? If you really want people to take you seriously, then I highly recommend you put in the legwork and actually make a solid argument instead of, as you said, soapboxing.
Even all those things that I listed previously, as bad as they are, you can diagnose pretty easily that this, that Christianity and God is the solution.
So do it! Show us the proof! I don't care how intuitive you think your answer is, you still need to prove it. I am not willing to believe an unsubstantiated claim like that. I really have no reason to believe that if our nation were to turn to God, that we would be better off. Quite frankly, I believe that the opposite is more likely to be true, and for your convenience, I will lay out why that is in a simple, valid line of reasoning with statistics to back it up. Tolerance and acceptance is a good thing, and science literacy should be strived for in any good nation. According to these statistics, religious folk are less likely to be tolerant of others. People with higher education are less likely to be religious. Religious folk are less likely to believe in evolution, and countries with a higher religious affiliation perform lower with science and math. If we were to turn away from religion, this country would become more tolerant, accepting, and scientifically literate, thereby making our country a better place. There! You see how easy it is to make even just a slightly decent argument with evidence? To be clear, that argument is not entirely accurate to what I actually believe. I think that we should cherish religious freedom in America while also striving for acceptance and knowledge.
For example, people who have fallen into sexual sin don't know the harm they cause themselves and their partner or partners. And scientists have even proven that when a man and a woman have sex, they form a connection. And this is, stated in the Bible already centuries earlier. So science is finally catching up to religion.
Wow. How impressive of the Bible to acknowledge that sex is important to us as a social species. Brilliant work. Bravo. Here's your medal and a bottle of champagne. Good work. Once again, please show me where you're getting this information. Like what verse or verses support what you said. It's not like scientists didn't know that sex is important to us socially. Now we just have a better understanding as to why and how. Something the Bible never really seems to help us with.
But the point I'm making in all of these things and all these problems, like mental health, nobody getting married, drug use, all these things could be fixed if people just turn to Christ.
Interesting hypothesis. Got any data to support that claim?
Now, the people addicted to drugs, money, themselves are worshiping things that make themselves feel good temporarily.
Didn't think so. Of course he doesn't have the data to support any of his ideas. How silly of me to even think for a second that he could finally change for the better. And how fitting that instead of supporting his hypothesis, he turns to scrutinize the outgroup. Very clever, Dylan.
Which is a terrible, terrible toll on your mental health, right? If you're trying to find satisfaction in something that's, worldly, whether it's money or women or weightlifting, like you're never going to have enough of that. However, if you go and you turn to God, you will feel more fulfilled in your life because it is a more fulfilling thing for your soul.
And what about the people who get traumatized when they do that? What about all the people who get made to feel like disgusting filth by their churches? What about all the people who try with their whole hearts to find God but come up short? My guess is that you don't actually care about those people. My guess is that you'll have some sort of excuse for all those situations in order to dismiss the evidence that contradicts your beliefs. Like when people say,
"You were never really a Christian."
That kind of no true Scotsman bullshit. It's thought terminating. It alleviates your cognitive dissonance to discredit people's experiences. It is rhetoric that is harmful and should not be used seriously.
What I'm trying to say is that the worldly things that we desire are all temporary. But at the end of our lives, we end up in the grave anyways. We don't bring our things with us.
So enjoy it while you can. This life is all that we truly know we have, so make sure to live a happy one. Personally, I don't want to risk my current certain life right now just for the chance that there is an afterlife. Seems like a bad bet.
Right? We all die. And it's just a matter of when and where you go after. Jesus says, and I'm going to bring some scripture into this, but Jesus says in Mark 8, verses 34 through 38, and calling to the crowd with his disciples, he said to them, "If anyone would come after him, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's sake will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For what can a man give in return for his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words is in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him will the Son of Man also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." Now, what I think Jesus is saying here, and if you differ opinions with me in the comments, just put it down below. I'll read it probably. But what Jesus is trying to say is that if you deny yourself, like if you deny your worldly desires, and you give up the things that you think are making you happy, but are actually harming you.
How are these things harming people? Like, Yeah, some of them clearly are harmful, but others not so much. Again, I really have no reason to take you on your word for anything. I am very skeptical by nature. You're gonna need more than personal testimony to convince me of something as important as this.
You will end up getting eternal life through Christ and going to heaven, but you'll also end up happier and more fulfilled on earth.
Firstly, let me start off by saying that it is not necessarily true that turning to Christ will make people happier. Sure, some people might find themselves more happy, but not everyone does, and not everyone will. Personally, I feel a lot more accomplished and freer than I ever did when I believed in Christianity. I'm a happier person than I was, and even if it were true that I would be happier as a Christian, I am not willing to just believe to make myself happy. I care more about facts and evidence than I do about happiness, so turning to Christ despite the lack of evidence is not worth it to me, no matter how happy I might be. If I were to actually be presented with solid evidence that your God exists, then sure, I'll believe in it, but I will not be convinced by feelings. I will be convinced by evidence.
I myself was living in some of these ways and contributing to the decline of our great nation, but I have recently rekindled my relationship with the Lord Jesus because there's more to life than whatever I was pursuing.
I think I'm pursuing some pretty great things despite the fact that I am an atheist. I want to spread acceptance and understanding of people who have been oppressed or misunderstood and educate the world however I can. Seems pretty good to me. What exactly will Christ offer me? Religion doesn't seem to be necessary in order to do or strive for great things. So what about it would stop our nation from falling apart?
However, all is not lost because I plan on trying to help people strengthen their faith and try to reinstall the Christian principles that help make our country so great.
You are aware that the US was never intended to be a Christian nation, and that the principles on which our country lies are not necessarily Christian in nature, right? America being a Christian nation is a lie that I hear all the time, and if you really want to know more about that lie and how America was actually intended to be, then I highly recommend you check out The Founding Myth by Andrew Siddell. Why not focus your attention on spreading ideas that have statistically shown themselves to lead to a happier and healthier nation, such as education? That's why I want to educate people, because it actually does help people and improve societies.
Because while we are all on the decline, like a semi going downhill at 80 miles per hour with no brakes, we still have the power of God on our side. Hopefully. Lastly, I just want people to understand this. If you are going through some of these problems, because I can rattle off statistics all day long.
Apparently not. You have a bad track record when it comes to statistics, and I do not believe for a second that the supposed statistics you're talking about would be reliable, because you have failed to show them at all. Actions speak louder than words, Dylan. Instead of saying that you could give us the statistics, just give them to us.
But if you're going through some of these problems, drugs, sexual immorality, pride, love of money, if you turn to Christ, just know that your sins are forgiven through him, and you can start a new life without those burdens, right? And you can shed your past sinful ways, and you will no longer have to bear the burdens and pains of your past.
That seems a bit abusive. It seems wrong to me that the people are being made to seem like dirty people for simply being human, but if they just put all of their trust in an organization that did not rightfully earn it, that all of their sins will be washed away. Gross.
If you go to him. And to do that, I recommend go to your local church. There are some bad churches, so be careful.
If you decide to go to a church, then make sure up front that they support LGBT people and are accepting of different faiths. Make sure their teachings are safe and not harmful. I cannot stress enough how terrible a lot of churches can be, so it is really important that you go to a good one. That's the end of the video. Unfortunately, everything Dylan said in the video was very lackluster. Not much to really talk about since he was mostly just stating things without evidence. I feel like I was just rambling more than I was saying anything important. There was nothing in the video that suggested with any level of certainty that turning back to the church would help our nation whatsoever. Pretty disappointing, but not exactly surprising. Maybe the next episode will be better should it ever come out. Anyway, once again, if you like this type of content, then feel free to subscribe, as this is the type of stuff that I like to make. And also leave a like. It helps me know what kind of stuff people like to watch. Thank you for your time, and remember to stay skeptical.